Okay, so this program tonight is about applying to a juried show, just to kind of give everybody some information on best practices, and there's some technical stuff in there that we won't go through tons, but it'd be nice if you don't really get the whole, some things you can refer back to it later. So Sharon put together this nice book, and hopefully this will increase your chances of getting accepted and decrease your chance of wasting a bunch of entry fees, because the average price to apply for a jury show outside of CAS is about $35. So, you know, you really want to be careful about, you know, where you put your money. And so in the beginning here, we've got some things about just general tips. One of them is, I'll be sitting there reading a call and be like, oh, this sounds so cool. And then I'll realize that, you know, they're looking for landscapes. It's like, click, delete, you know. So make sure that when you're reading a call, if it's a themed show, that you're fitting into the theme, that if it's a watercolor show, you're not sending them oils, you know, because that fine print is fairly important. This talks about hiring a professional photographer, and we'll get to photographing your artwork a little bit later, but image quality is paramount, because there's nothing worse than having a gorgeous piece of art and a bad photo. And then it doesn't get in the show. Or, you know, and for heaven's sakes, don't pump up the color or anything, because if it gets to where it's going and it doesn't look like the photo, that's not a good thing either. So most of these places are getting not so much the CAS, but like, I think I was 1,200 pieces of art, something like that. A lot of them do, and they may pick 50. So not only do you have to stand out, but they have a certain regiment for cataloging the entries, and if you don't name your image right, you're going in the trash. They're not going to rename your image so it fits into their spreadsheet. So follow those directions. And so then, you know, it talks about framing and stuff like that here too. So that, we'll get to that a little bit later. Some general things is, I did some research because Sharon said, find out what's the industry standard, height by width or width by height. Well, I'm one of those dingbats that always just puts the smallest size first. Just seems logical to me. But apparently, the industry standard is height by width. So it's exactly opposite of everything else in the world. So you wouldn't say an 8.5 by 11. You call it an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. You wouldn't say 11 by 8.5. But in the art world, it's 11 by 8.5. 8. So just remember, it's exactly opposite of the whole rest of the world. It's height by width. Like I said, when they're naming files, they're going to probably tell you how they want it named. But if they don't, put your name in the file name, because otherwise, once that file is gone, unless it's watermarked, it is no longer connected to you at all. Nobody's going to know that peach tree number 3 is yours unless your name is in the title of the file. So make sure that it travels with the file. And don't put entries in a Word document and send them. People hate that. They want a JPEG or a PNG, or maybe a PDF if they say a PDF is okay. But embedded images in Word docs are just not, they can't put it in their viewer. They'll trash it. They won't even look at it. There's a lot of mystery to people who don't use Photoshop, and maybe some that do, surrounding file size and pixel dimensions, because a lot of places want you to be no more than 1,500 on the longest size pixels, or no more than 2 megabytes. I put some links in here. These are online sizers. Photoshop Express is an app you can put on your tablet. That'll, if you don't run the full Photoshop. I've never used it, but I use Photoshop, and I think most everybody does. But I know you can size online, and that could be a whole nother program. But what I put some little addresses in here if you want to check them out. There's also a few more useful links about art calls and how to be successful at them. Some technical definitions. We don't need to go through every single one of these, but if you're wondering the difference between a PPI and a DPI, it's right here. So you can look at that. Pixels are what we're looking at for online viewing. Dots per inch is a printer measurement. Lots of times they're going to tell you no more than 1,000 pixels, and that's that measurement that you're looking for. So I'll say briefly, the resolution is how many pixels are in a square inch. So if you've got 100 pixels in an inch, or 300 pixels in that same inch, 300 is a high res because there's more information, and 100 is a low res. So a 10 by 15 at 100 DPI and a 10 by 15 at 300 DPI are not the same. Your 300 DPI file is 3 times bigger than your 100 DPI file, regardless of the inch. It's the pixel measurement that matters. So at 300 DPI, a 10 by 15 is 1,500 by 1,000 pixels. That same file at 100 is 150 by 100, right? Did I do that math right?
Yeah.
Now we're recording. Great. Anyway, so imagine taking those dots and blowing them up or shrinking them down. And so there's a little chart in here that kind of explains that.